Before we get started
Tammy-
with the agenda,
Tammy may not be here tonight. She let me know.
okay. George has an item, and I have an item that's not on the agenda, so we will not start the agenda until
Okay.
you get through.
Okay, just wanted to thank Chief Duger. He's been here for a couple of years. He's getting ready to leave. He's going to be going to Dyess Air Force Base, Texas, and every base has a command chief who's the senior enlisted person on the base. They usually wear a diamond in their chevrons, not a diamond, a star. And he's been selected, handpicked to be the command chief at Dyess Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for being part of our community for the last few years. You've been very helpful, and we've very much appreciated your being here. And farewell.
Thanks for having me here in Vance.
All right.
And Enid, Oklahoma. So it's been wonderful being here. My family has enjoyed it. It's been a nice, peaceful existence here without all the noise. I can do it out Oklahoma City from Philadelphia by trade. So we've enjoyed it, and it's just time for us to go take on that new challenge and go develop new airmen and actually just take that Enid America with me down there to Abilene, and we'll see how we do. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. All right.
Good luck to you. Best.
Thank you.
Second item, lady sitting next to me that keeps me out of trouble had a birthday today.
Hey.
Oh.
And there's cake in there for everybody. Happy birthday, Alyssa. Thanks for your help. Let's call the meeting to order. We're all present except for Tammy. And did you say she may or may not be here,
I
Gerald?
think she's going to be here.
Okay.
She let me know yesterday.
Okay. Item 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda of August the 21st, 2018.
Bill, actually, I do have one item on the claims list. Gerald always likes to hear about the claims list. Under capital assets and projects, we have a Sunrise shed there, a portable shed for $13,900. Where is that at?
That is at the football fields. I believe.
That cost
That's the new-
$13,000?
Only $13,000. That was a good deal. If we tried to, you remember we replaced that block building that was there?
Yeah, I know the one.
And we demolished that building and hooked up that new building. I think it's even hooked up to some plumbing now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
And
was
the
by there
EGRT
today.
folks are very ecstatic about that improvement.
I was gonna look at it, but nobody had the key.
I'm sure they got the key now.
It was locked.
Bolt cutter.
But there was a bunch of people there still working.
Yeah, that's what that was for,
Okay.
and I think it was a great improvement, and I think CDBG is going to reimburse for some of that in the future, if not all of that.
Somebody said it even had a bathroom in it.
I think it does.
Somebody said it's actually sort of a tiny house. I didn't know what,
I'm not
I haven't
sure
seen the
it's
inside
a
of it.
tiny house, but it's a tiny concession stand, maybe.
A tiny bathroom's about $20,000.
Yeah, I know, but this was a portable device, and I
understand.
anyway, that sounds like a wonderful project.
It is an improvement. I can't estimate what it would cost to try and build that with cinder blocks or something, but it would have taken a lot, probably more money and certainly more time. And as you know, time is of the essence. The football season is starting
Yes, it
soon.
is. Within a couple weeks. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Item 3, update on road construction projects and construction traffic management. Chris?
Thank you, sir. What I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce one of our project engineers, Jason. He will be making this presentation. He does our traffic stuff now. And he likes it here in Enid, and I think he's going to stay.
Yep. Thank you very much. Chris said, my name is Jason Unner, and I came from Oklahoma State University after working in the consulting field for just a little bit. What we're going to talk about is the traffic management that's going to be going on kind of throughout the city as we move on through projects throughout the upcoming year, so about a year and a half. 10 projects that we have on deck right now. We all know Cleveland, Chestnut intersection, that's happening right now as we speak. Broadway Waterline, Broadway Mill and Overlay, the Van Buren Overpass, which we got a few details on that I'd like to cover when we get there. The Willow Bridge out on by 66, it should be wrapping up pretty quick. Leona Mitchell, our 3 local streets that we're working on right now, Indiana, 12th, and Harvard, those are going to begin fairly soon. And 4th Street, out kind of by Chestnut, it's going to begin the next year or so. Here's a broad view of the city, just kind of covering a few. I mean, it shows kind of, we're covering basically all sides of town. If you all didn't notice on this previous map, what's not on there? Willow Road. I've been here 10 months and it's been closed. It feels like all of those months, and I'm sure you all feel the same. No more closures. Projects is very nearly complete. We got a little bit more sod work, turf work, a little bit of grading alongside the road to finish up to get it completely done. Upcoming this fall, here's what it looks like. Kind of the easy way to say it. I know that's really short and sweet, but what we got going on mostly is there's Cleveland and Chestnut. We'll have some closures there. I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail later on. There's US 81 over BNSF right now, which we'll be getting fairly soon. The 2 Broadway projects, Broadway Waterline, Van Buren to Washington, and 16th to University. Indiana Avenue, that's one of our local street projects. Construction on the water line is currently underway right now. Construction on the roadway will be beginning sometime in September. And then down here is Leona Mitchell. It's going to be closed for the foreseeable future. We're in design right now on it. Starting to kind of look at the best way to take care of it. Here's an aerial of US 81 or BNSF. Learned some interesting things today about it. We had a meeting with ODOT and the contractors on it. It was kind of our understanding to begin with that some of the closures that were going to happen at Chestnut and Kenwood were going to be kind of permanent deals, but they're not. They're only going to be intermediate closures, maybe a day or 2 at a time during demolish and construction phases of the project. One other thing that we learned today that I didn't get into this presentation, the restrictions are going to start in September, and they're going to begin with the crossover portion of the project. And so to begin with in September, the middle lanes will be closed, the 2 outside lanes will be open. That's going to happen in September through a little bit in October. And after October, when the crossover's done, that's whenever the switches, it'll go from the west side to the east side of the project. Moving into winter of this year, beginning of next year, still looks like we still got a lot of stuff going on. Indiana's done. The local streets should be moved over to Harvard and 12th Street. Local streets shouldn't be that much of a closures, affecting traffic that much. Broadway Waterline should be wrapping up, getting pretty close to being done. Same thing with the Broadway Mill and Overlay. At this time, it's eastbound. Is that right? Yeah, eastbound Chestnut will be closed at Cleveland. Leona Mitchell will still be closed. This will be after winter, so we're looking into spring, summer of 19. That's whenever westbound Chestnut at Cleveland will be closed. Of course, we'll still be doing the restrictions as before with US 81 over BNSF. Leona Mitchell, our 2 local streets, they should be done by then. And so the final phasing of Cleveland, which is, well, I'll show you here in a little bit. Not a whole lot going on there at Cleveland during that. US 81 will still be going on. And that was 4th Street there, south of Chestnut. I think we're calling it 4th Street Truck Lane. That should be beginning construction sometime in this time frame. And hopefully Leon Mitchell will be under construction and be about done by now.
What are you gonna do with the trucks while you have that under construction? Have you got enough place for them to park?
We don't know yet. We just started this project as far as what we're doing and what we're looking at.
It's pretty tight in there.
Yes, it is. Hopefully we can I'm thinking currently we'll do some kind of phasing. Try to get them on half of the road, keep them stuck that way or pushed that way, and then we may have to reroute them to the south or something of that nature. Moving into Cleveland phasing, this is it's what's going to be happening throughout Cleveland. We all know that Cleveland's we're adding lanes, adding signals, improving drainage, improving trails and sidewalks from around Chestnut up to the VNSF crossing. Construction started in May. We got 450 days on it. Total of 6 phases. We are on phase 3. Phase 3 is by far the largest impact to traffic that we have on the project. Well, we'll see here. There's an aerial. Here's phase 3. Phase 3 has got Cleveland closed south of Chestnut. That's what's happening as we speak right now. No through traffic. Eastbound traffic needs to be turned north, and we have rerouted around Cleveland to Willow and then back down on 81. Westbound's fairly, it just pushed over the side. Traffic from the north is rerouted from Randolph off onto Randolph and up to Johnson and then back onto Chestnut. This is phase 4. We'll be going into the winter on this. The previous slide, that's supposed to last until sometime in November. And then this will be what happens then after that. Westbound traffic is closed. Basically the rest of it's open. Let's see, westbound will be routed down Johnson, which is off the picture over there. Apologize for that. Be routed down Johnson and across on Randolph and back up Cleveland. And then on phase 5, this one, the eastbound is westbound, west of intersection is closed. That one we'll either go north and south at Cleveland to get around. Final phase of Cleveland. Traffic will be open in all directions, north, south, east, and west. The restrictions on Cleveland will be on the center median. That's what we'll be kind of putting in the curbs and medians and turnouts and stuff like that along there. Oops, I think I skipped a slide. Oh, guess not. This is where we are right now. This is where the closure is happening right now. This is Chestnut right here in Cleveland going into the picture. I think this was probably taken about a month ago whenever some of the initial phasing was taking place. But that's where the closure is right now. Let's see, we're on Cleveland there, and we're looking north alongside Cleveland. I think the Chestnut's probably about 200 foot or so behind us there. Again, this was taken about a month ago, and this was taken last week. This was taken last week, and showing some of the progress that's on the east side of Cleveland and the work that's being done. Questions, comments, concerns?
One question about the Cleveland and Chestnut project. A lot of dirt work has been done there around the intersection. How far is that going to be widened to the north there of that intersection?
To the north.
No, the south, excuse me.
To the south.
Yes.
Chris, do you know off the top of your
I
hand?
thought it was just to make turning lanes.
Yeah, what was the question again, sir?
Well, how
all
far
the dirt work and drainage work that's been done there, south of the intersection.
It's
Yes.
going down to here.
It won't quite make it that far. We'll be south about 1,000 feet. If you look, if you notice the big drainage structure that they built out there, south of the intersection, that's where the widening really gets started. It'll be south of that, several hundred feet. We can get you the
Okay.
exact distance if you need it,
So the whole intersection is gonna be widened going all directions?
all
Yes,
directions.
sir. Yes.
Okay. But it kinda looked like that way because
Yes.
you moved a
Yeah.
lot of dirt.
Yeah.
Did a lot of drainage work there, I know.
We've built a
Yeah.
lot of
I
structures.
think that's a pretty good representation of it as far as length.
Yeah, you are correct, because that's a driveway, that's not Maple.
Yes, yes.
Chris, is
That's a private
the
drive.
southbound portion of Cleveland going all the way to Maple
No,
towards 4-lane?
no.
It's going right there to the,
This is a private drive,
okay.
so we'll take care of this drive and make sure they have access during construction. And when we get done, this driveway will be integrated with our driving surface, so we don't have to do anything else, it'll be done.
But we'll still have a chunk of 2-lane between
Yes, you will.
Randolph and
Between the south end of here and Randolph.
Randolph. It's a half a mile. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
After the northern portion of Cleveland, north of BNSF to Willow, that's a project that's in design right now. And then following that project, that's when south of the south portion from Chestnut to Randolph, that progress will begin.
Are they gonna finish the east lane all the way to the intersection, or are they going to shift over and do some of the west lane before? The east lane is the one that's under construction.
Yes, yeah, that's probably gonna be wide, or, sorry, that will be wide enough that that's, traffic will be diverted over to there. Is that what?
Yeah, where's your status pictures?
Oh.
David, can you help?
Nope.
Go back to the picture that showed pavement, and I
That's
think the
where I'm
question
trying to get
was,
to.
yeah.
Can you get me to the picture with the concrete pavement?
It's locked up.
Remember the picture that had the sledgehammer sitting on the pavement?
Yeah.
That's one driving lane that will eventually be the northbound inside lane. Where the backhoe was sitting, that will be another driving lane and curb and gutter
So you're
section.
gonna finish those two lanes all the way to the intersection?
Yeah, where we can use them as we do the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be phase 3, phase 4 is where it connects right there. During construction, I see what you're asking now. That east side connects right there, correct?
That one right
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Okay.
Will all the other lanes be asphalt, or is it gonna be all pavement,
It'll be all concrete.
the whole, stretch?
Sure.
What about on Chestnut going west and east to west?
It's all concrete. Yeah.
Yeah, we find that if we build our intersections out of PC concrete, that they survive a lot longer because it's that slow turning movements that create the most damage to our roads.
How thick is that slab right there?
I would guess 9 inches, but I'm not positive.
roughly 1/5 of a sledgehammer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah. I can look and let you know. It's-
I just,
Okay.
just curiosity.
And
What
that's-
date are we looking at for the Willow Bridge, as far as completion?
Into September?
Out by 66, yeah, towards the end of September. It's, I was trying to think of when that started.
It'll be about the end of the September.
Well, what's important is when it's gonna end, there's 10
Well,
days
well,
added
that's-
to it.
well-
You guys are doing that tonight
We added,
on the.
yeah, we've got 10 days.
Yeah, we added 10 days.
to it.
I just was,
At no cost, but, you know, it's also, we've had a lot more rain this summer than we normally used to. And so, kind of hoping that it doesn't do too much of an impact.
And the bridge on Leona Mitchell, the February of next year, or?
Well, we really don't know yet. We're in the process of hiring a design firm. It'll take us 6-9 months to get the design done, and then we got to come up with the money to replace it.
Well, yeah, let's just backtrack a little bit too, Commissioner Norwood, to update you again on that chunk fell out of it. It's been several months ago now. We had that analyzed. The whole deck had to be analyzed. The whole deck is substandard now, right? And
That's
therefore,
correct.
it's still shut down, needs to be replaced. I think what Chris is saying is that it's being looked at now to see how much of it has to be replaced. And I don't know if we determined that whether the whole deck has to be replaced or the whole thing has to be replaced.
We found that 80% of the panels were below 3,200 PSI.
Wow.
Yes, so we're not taking any chances. We'll start with a deck replacement design, and then once we peel it off, we're expecting, or as we're going through the design process, we'll do some up-close inspections on the superstructure and the pylons and the pylon caps.
Wasn't that replaced a few years back?
No.
Not that part, but
I don't believe that was
There
replaced.
was a
close
bridge,
to it.
there was a bridge south of it about 500 feet that was completely rebuilt.
There's a box there, a brand new box there. Just-
So that's the old bridge
That's
that's
the
been fixed
old
now?
bridge.
Okay. Well, I got a few calls on it today, so that's the reason I'm asking about
Just today?
it. Yeah.
We're certainly gonna
But-
look to try and move as expeditiously as we can. The problem is it's a bridge. The problem is it's a substantial failure. And so part or all of it's gonna have to be replaced.
Okay.
And so we're focused on figuring that out, get going on design.
Yes.
And we will figure out the money as we go, but the money can be very expensive. I know that the root bridge that we just rehabbed was about $1 million, I believe.
Once you, counting everything, yes.
So I don't know how this compares with span and length, but it's probably going to be a similar type expenditure to fix that bridge properly.
Okay.
The good news is we'll have both bridges, because there's another bridge, I think, close to it that's brand
is.
new. It's part of the Geo Bond projects.
There's a creek that runs under there, I believe. So that probably has a lot to do with the expense of it.
It's pretty high. I mean, but if it doesn't reach 32 PSI when you test it, then we can't take it.
Deck minimum is 4,000 PSI.
Okay.
While we're on other things, the chunk of Randolph I've been asking you about in front of Northwestern carries a ton of traffic. It's gotten really bad. You said in an email earlier this week they would have to be added to the bid list. What kind of time frame is that?
Well, what I said it would have to be added to a list of repairs, either arterial streets or local streets.
Yeah, that's definitely arterial.
Yes.
Carries a ton of traffic coming
We
off.
probably need to look at
to
it
the
some more.
east.
I've looked at it myself, and yes, it's got a problem, but it's still drivable. The concrete's broken, particularly around an entrance there.
Well, it's
But
not
it's-
so much around the entrance. It's between the entrances to Northwestern, and it's heading east. It's not just broken. There's a pretty
Yes.
significant shear that you just hit with your driver's side front tire, and it's not. I mean, it's gotten progressively worse just in the last couple months.
I'm gonna have to get with engineering to
Okay.
probably add it to the list of repairs and/or.
There's a
I
Band-Aid we
think
can
there'll be,
do. Or...
there may be, but I think to fix it right, a lot of the street's gonna have to be replaced.
Okay.
I think there's probably some issues underneath the street. That's typically what happens that causes those problems.
Sure. Well,
No,
Randolph
we-
carries an enormous amount of traffic
It
right
does.
there in that stretch heading east-west. We probably need to put that a little higher up.
And we certainly are looking at it. Again, I'll go look at it again. I looked at it recently, and honestly, compared to other streets, it wasn't that bad, but I do take your point, it carries a lot
Well-
of traffic.
Is it on Randolph?
Yeah, it's Randolph between the two entrances in Northwestern.
Okay.
And coming off 30th, that east-west Randolph is a huge traffic load, and it's just gotten worse over the summer. When I asked you about it earlier, July, but it's just getting. I drive back and forth there to the grocery store.
We
an
have
awful lot,
determined
but-
that it is probably not something we want to take on with the concrete crew,
Okay.
simply because of the underlying
Well,
problems. we
let me
we're
know
gonna
what
find.
kind of time frame, what kind of money it would take to get fixed.
I owe you a timeline.
Yeah,
You bet.
on that one. Thanks.
And Gerald will go take a look and put together some estimates.
Okay.
Because apparently I owe you a timeline.
Yeah, when we look at it, I think if there's an initial repair, but I think there's gonna be more to that. At least that's my non-engineer assessment.
It's a big chunk.
Any other
Questions?
streets? This is a great
Well,
opportunity.
we could go a long time. But
Well, we could.
Thank
We
you.
go as long as we
Thank
have
you.
money.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, if I can, just 1 second
Yes, sir.
before Chief Tugger
You bet.
walks away. So he was my right hand this day because I was flying an airplane. More importantly, Thursday's his last day of Vance. He's gonna go be the command chief Big Chief at Dyess Air Force Base starting on Friday. So if you would, a little round of a hand for my man. Thank you, everybody. I see you ate my lunch, so that's good.
There probably is more in there.
Yeah, we'll be all right.
Item 4, update on the Call Lake Water Supply Project. Chris,
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Michael?
As most of you know, we went and talked to the water board today. We got some real compliments from the board members. Several of them had commented that they were very impressed that we were forward-thinking and taking care of this problem and considering the rest of Northwest Oklahoma. So, yay. These are the things that we're going to talk about today. A little bit on what's coming up in the next phase, design consultant selection, and then our land acquisition process. Michael?
Thank you, Chris. Mayor, commission members, it's good to be back before you again for a brief update. We are transitioning out of phase 2 and into phase 3. As you will recall, concepts were developed, preliminary cost estimates in phase 1. Concepts were further refined into a preliminary design in phase 2. The environmental assessment began in phase 2, and we started engaging the public, some public meetings, and just a lot more public involvement in general around the program in phase 2. We also updated that cost opinion. We also developed a phasing plan to budget. That is nearing completion now, and we are about ready to get started with phase 3. The major components of phase 3, of course, will be taking that phased approach and its preliminary design through the final design step. That will then allow us to get that project ready for bidding. The actual bidding of the project for construction will occur in phase 4, but we'll be producing final designs or bid documents in phase 3. Another major component, and you've heard Mr. Gdansky and myself mention this a number of times, probably the largest schedule risk. And when we talk about schedule risk, we have a tendency to worry about cost a little bit as well, and that is land acquisition. We'll be beginning the land acquisition process in phase 3. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few more slides. And then wrapping up the environmental permitting component. The assessment that started in phase 2 will be completed in phase 3. Looking forward to getting that behind us. Phase 4, again, that bidding, construction management, the actual construction of the infrastructure itself. As components finish construction and are ready to bring online, there'll be a startup phase or commissioning phase, a training phase for your staff, and ultimately program closeout. More specific to phase 3, particularly with program management role, some of the activities that'll be going on. Consultant selection, if the commission will recall, Garver has only taken the project through 30% design, and then we've got identified 11 different construction projects associated with this program, and we'll probably have somewhere in the ballpark of 8 different final design consultants that are taking that 30% phase plan all the way through 100% or bid documents. We'll be helping you with the selection of those consultants right off the bat, and then providing design oversight of those consultants to ensure that those bid documents are compliant with the design consultant standards that have been developed in previous phases of this program. You guys have invested a lot of effort into developing standard details, standard specifications, standard design criteria, so that these 11 projects all look like one project when it's done. And it doesn't look like 11 different consulting firms provided this project. And so adherence to those standards is a very important component. Not only that, but also making sure that each of these pieces fits together properly. When you've got 11 different projects going on at once and you expect all 11 of them to interface properly, it requires a lot of oversight and management, and that's one of the major roles of phase 3. Land acquisition, I mentioned, is another major component. The topographic survey of the pipeline is another major component of phase 3. I mentioned already finalizing the environmental assessment, and then the ongoing program administration, which will be a little bit more robust in phase 3. We've got a couple different loan packages. We've got A couple different sub-consultants now that are working on the program, notably the land acquisition services, and then ongoing controls and reporting so that you guys continue to have access to whatever you feel like you need from a reporting standpoint to keep you and your citizenry abreast of where things are going on with the program. Rebaselining the schedule, we had a little bit of a schedule breach while we were finishing up phase 2, working through the funding challenges through the spring and the summer. And so what this slide represents is the rebaselining of that schedule. Originally, we were anticipating that phase 3 would be kicking off in July. We have bumped that to October. As Chris mentioned, the really good news from the Water Resources Board allows us to be a lot more confident now in that October start date. And that's really what this reflects. Although I will point out that we are bumping up really closely to the end of 2022 with this rebaselining, and that's been a goal for quite some time, is to deliver this program by the year 2022. There will probably be some commissioning that rolls into 2023, but with this schedule and an October start, we are anticipating construction to be complete in 2022. Let me talk just real briefly about one of the first things that is going to happen in phase 3, and I mentioned this earlier, and that is the selection of final design consultants. I mentioned there'll be approximately 11 projects, and there may be up to 8 different final design consultants working on those 11 projects.
Michael, are these 11 projects all above surface?
No, the pipeline's not.
Say that again.
The pipeline will, is not something that you'll see. Are you talking about stuff that is above grade on the ground? Everything but the pipeline will be visible.
Okay.
There'll be some underwater work, obviously, at the intake, but there will be a visible intake once the project is complete.
I have a question about the pipeline when you get through.
Okay, I don't have a pipeline slide, so you might want to go ahead and ask it if you want.
Will it be done in certain sections?
It will.
Not by just one contractor?
That's correct. We have identified.
Y'all have to
That's right.
meet up.
That's right. And we have identified 8 different pipeline segments that will be 8 different construction packages, 8 different bid lettings. I can't guarantee that one contractor might not get more than one of those, but.
7 miles apiece.
Right.
Yes, the goal with breaking that up is twofold. Number one is we protect our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, we've made the packages small enough that some of our local construction firms
Yes,
can bid them and bond them.
that's good.
And Michael, when you talk about 11 projects, why don't you clarify, are you talking about the intake, the pipeline, the water treatment plant, the booster pump station? What are you talking about?
I am. You almost got them all. That's it. 8 of those 11 are on the pipeline. An intake pump station is 9. Water treatment plant is 10. And the distribution system improvements, the tying in of the finished water to your existing system, is 11.
So the pipeline's 8 parts of that project?
8 of the 11,
pieces
yeah.
of that, okay.
Good clarification, Gerald, thank you. Okay, so we will be aiding the city engineering staff and probably have some input from legal and purchasing as well on development of a request for qualifications to solicit qualifications from the engineering community, the consulting engineering community. Once we receive those qualifications, we'll review those qualifications, weigh heavily on city staff experience to do that, rank those qualifications. There may be some elements of the program that we want to see an actual proposal developed by the engineering consultants. Some of the more technical elements of the program may require more than just a qualification statement. May want to look at some proposals. So don't anticipate that would occur on the entire program, but there may be some elements that necessitate that. Evaluate qualifications, evaluate proposals, ultimately select consultants for the right project, and then present that selection process to the commission. It'll probably start a little bit slow. I mean, we'll probably select for one project, and then maybe we'll bring a couple more to you, and then maybe we'll bring the rest of them to you. We haven't really figured out that schedule yet. We're still working through that. But we don't want to overwhelm everyone and select them all at once, but we also want to be expeditious and maintain our schedule. Another piece I wanted to talk about tonight that will commence almost immediately is the land acquisition process, and this is just a general overview of that process. Just as a reminder, we are crossing approximately 240 parcels along the pipeline route. We will acquire a permanent easement for the pipeline, as well as a temporary easement to facilitate the construction.
How wide is the permanent easement
At this time, we're anticipating 50 feet,
and the construction?
50, another 50, yeah.
That's a wide permanent easement for,
Just want to make sure we've got plenty of access to get to
Sure.
it during the event of a leak or failure. Try to keep the structures from being built too close to what might end up being a trench someday while we're repairing a pipeline.
And it's 36 inches.
And a 36-inch pipe.
Yeah.
Large pipe. Land acquisition consultant will provide and coordinate the acquisition services, which will include property valuation, coordination with landowners, front porch negotiations with landowners, helping us to secure those easements, and then presenting packages to you for commission approval. Our land acquisition consultant is here tonight, Smith Roberts. Land surveying is here tonight. Craig Cunningham and Mark Bellew are both available if we have any detailed questions about their services. We have a very detailed procedure and policy for landowner communication for that protocol. We think this, in addition to schedule risk, we think this has a very important component from a public relations standpoint for this project. We are extremely sensitive to that. We will define a set of boundaries that our field personnel are comfortable working in and that you're comfortable with our folks working in, and when that boundary gets pushed, we're going to get the city involved.
I have a question. What happens if you have a tenant on the land?
A tenant,
Yes,
lease farmer?
if a renter, leaser, whatever you want to call it, a non-landowner, do you deal with him? I've never seen anything where you do.
But we'll at least have to communicate with him.
I understand that.
But that's between him and who he's released the land from.
It's not like a
But,
royalty.
exactly, but we want to be considerate of crops and when they need to be in the field and when we need to be in the field.
Sure.
You know, and the reason why we've written this down and why we have processes and procedures in place, we have over 240 opportunities to stub our toes. And if we don't use the same process and the same people talking the same thing, then that risk goes up. And we don't really need to go there.
What part of the land acquisition process is gonna happen this year?
In this calendar year,
This calendar year, yes. I noticed it indicated there on that chart that it was gonna begin in October.
well, we'll start communicating with easement documents towards the end of the calendar year, once we get everything up and running. We have our handout cards, we have our procedures. Everybody that goes in the field is either wearing a shirt with a logo or a hat with a logo. They carry a card that tells them who they are, why they are, and all the contact information. And so I don't know if I'll get an easement to you in this calendar year.
We're gonna be making contacts with land.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We are currently making contact with some of the landowners for some of our NEPA process, and we are using Smith Roberts to do that. And the last thing I want is my engineers out in the field.
I can understand that.
And I believe Garber's has a lot of good experience with Smith Roberts.
We do. We've worked with these guys for a long time, and they're very, very good at what they do and have a long track record of success. We have had a lot of opportunity to interact with these landowners over the last 2.5 years through the environmental work that Chris mentioned. You know, that requires right of entry. In addition to, communicating with these landowners in written form, we had to obtain permission for right of entry on these properties to do shovel digs and things like that for the archaeological evaluations. And we've had an extremely high percentage success rate of obtaining right of entry. But we haven't bought any property yet, so that's another phase that we're about to get into.
How many landowners do you deal with in those 60 quarters?
How many landowners per quarter?
Well, some are gonna own more than one quarter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and some of them are not contiguous. You know, the landowner, couple, 5 or 10 miles away may have another property or parcel quite a ways on the pipeline. But yeah, there are a couple of hits without contiguous property.
Which goes back to my comment, you don't want to stub your toe on one parcel and then turn around and walk up to the same door on a different parcel.
That will happen. And you
I
don't
hope
want
not.
that.
We've put everything in place that I believe that won't happen.
Real quickly, just a graphical representation of the general right-of-way process. This is kind of a decision matrix, if you will, kind of a guidance diagram as it goes to actually getting the commission acceptance of an easement, whether or not the landowner decides to donate.
It's optimistic.
We're going to go ahead and say no, and then we're going to, just for time's sake, right?
It has happened before.
Estimate fair market value, offer prepared, reviewed, sent to landowner. All of this is Garver Smith Roberts activities. Landowner accepts, then we complete the acquisition process. Landowner declines, then we start good faith negotiations. Obviously, city staff, legal, engineering, administration would be involved in these good faith negotiations. Negotiations successful, then we complete the transaction process, and if they're not successful, then we continue to engage city legal staff and maybe even the commission at that point.
How much ability do we have to jog to the next quarter over?
There's a little. It's
What,
not ideal,
uh,
Ben. It's not
yeah.
ideal because every time we move,
It adds steel.
it adds cost,
Yeah.
and you can't just jog a whole lot. So if you're going to move, you're going to move for a little while. But there are some access to county right-of-ways and state right-of-ways and things of that nature. We can jump in and do that, but it's absolutely not desirable. Or we would have
Do we
already.
have much intersection with natural gas pipelines?
We do. We have a
Do
lot
we
of.
go under, over?
Most generally under, but sometimes over too. Depends on where they're at. I mean, if you look at that, our utility GIS from a three-dimensional standpoint, it's like a spider web underneath there.
Sure.
And so,
And I'm always worried that something will change between today and tomorrow, so I expect to find a new one.
At what point do we start sending out checks?
As soon as you
Borrow
say
the money.
okay and vote, then we write a check. Smith Roberts will take the executed documents to the courthouse and file them, because we're going across 3 or 4 counties, and then we mail out a check.
So it
As
can
soon as she
happen-
says it's okay.
So it could happen fairly soon.
Fairly soon, yes.
Well, the only reason I ask that question is that,
Are we going across to you?
no, no, thank God. But I was just curious if you had to then relocate, if something occurred where you couldn't, did have to relocate the pipe, would you then have to go back and get your money back?
Could we
I'm
have
not
them
sure,
come-
sir.
Could we have them come to Enid to pick up that check?
yeah, that's a good point.
We can.
And stay at the downtown hotel, hopefully.
Okay, I think that's my last slide. Yes. Any other questions?
My assumption is that most of this is gonna take place in the rural areas. Are we gonna do anything as far as in the media to make it known as far as what we're doing? In the different, since we're gonna be dealing in different counties outside of Garfield County, will we let people know exactly what we're doing?
Commissioner, are you referring to the design and land acquisition process as far as public notification or the
project.
construction?
The construction part of the
Yeah,
project.
the city has done a
Michael,
great.
repeat his question, please.
How involved, are we going to do some, and I'm paraphrasing, are we going to do some advanced public relations,
Right.
public notice that here we come, we're going to do this project and it may impact you? Fair enough? Okay.
Perfect.
The city's done a great job getting ahead of some of that already. Steve and his group have done some videos, and the city's maintaining its website, and we've done a lot of flyers and things of that nature that say, hey, here we come. But that will really ramp up prior to the construction phase. At the end of this phase 3, the design phase, because there's not a lot of boots on the ground and certainly no heavy equipment and construction activity going on in this phase. But toward the end of this phase and the beginning of the next phase, we are suggesting that the public relations component of this program really ramp up, because we're going to know where we're digging, who's impacted, where spoils are going to be placed, driveways impacted, commercial business impacted. Talk to those people ahead of time, obviously, but also try to get the message out in the press as well.
So that people would know that it's actually happening.
Absolutely.
That's my point.
We've already been in front of all the county commissioners across here, so they know what we're doing. And we'll go back once we start doing land acquisition and visit them again. And we'll do that again when we start construction. And then any town hall meetings that we think we need to have, or public meetings, not town hall, but public meetings. Letters will go out on a regular basis when we're about to start something new. And of course, by that time, our goal is to have 240 neighbors. And if we have 240 neighbors, we've got 240 phone calls and Christmas cards to
Do
send
you
out.
have a lot of absentee owners?
Fair amount.
Fair
I
amount.
mean, smaller, on a percentage basis, relatively small, but that small percentage basis can be a challenge.
Kadansky does kind of remind me of Mr. Rogers.
Well, thank you, sir. It's good to be noticed.
Sorry about your neighbors.
Any other questions? Michael, Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Item 5, discuss the sidewalk ordinance.
Yeah, let me kick this one off. I told Carol I would do this for her. I thought we'd really done this about 6 times. I think we might have only done it 5. Carol did the research to see how many times it's changed. I think many of you sitting around this table have probably been part of those previous iterations. It may have started before anybody was here, I think about 2009. So we are going to talk about it again because some of you have asked to talk about it again. I just wanted to make, I've already made Carol aware of my thoughts, and I'll make you aware too. I think the ordinance, particularly on the residential side, accomplishes what the goal of the city was at one time, which was to have people help build sidewalks. In addition to the city builds sidewalks, and ADA requires sidewalks. And I don't believe we've had any variances come to the commission in a while on residential. So that tells me that it's not really an issue, at least not an issue where people are asking for variances from the sidewalks frequently now. It still comes up commercially and will probably continue to come up. And I think that's the focus of what we think we may still need to tweak. However, as you know, on the first and third Tuesdays, you can change the ordinance any way you want. So, and we have done that and demonstrated that on this sidewalk ordinance about 5 times. So I know it's not perfect. However, I think it is working, arguably. Even some of from the commercial standpoints where people could argue, why would I have to do this sidewalk? Some of that argument's been taken away because the lot next to it developed, the lot next to it developed. Now we have 3 lots of sidewalks. Is that perfect? No. So we have, as staff, we've sat down and talked about this quite a bit. And so I'm at the conclusion, I'm open to your suggestions on how to change it and fix it. And I think that's why we're here tonight. And Carol, you may have some ideas and suggestions. And Commissioner Jansen, I think you have some ideas too.
And some questions.
Okay, so I sent you guys a memo, and the one thing that I would add to Gerald's comments is just because you get variance requests does not mean that it necessarily you haven't gotten the right balance. But I understand Mr. Jansen is concerned, and he's the only one that's been extremely specific. I think his issue, I hope I got it right, is if we've already got a development and there's an addition in the back, or there's a small development on a site that's already been developed, then it triggers the whole site to have the parallel sidewalks. It seems like the sidewalks within the addition, we don't have problems with that. It's the parallel sidewalks that are going along the streets seems to be the issue. So,
Yeah.
what are your
Well,
thoughts?
no, you're exactly right. That's been the one thing, and we've had several of those situations come up, and I don't feel like our reaction to those has been as good as it might have been, because I know for a fact that some of the property owners are still unsatisfied, but because to me, I just our ordinance needs to make sense. And that aspect of this ordinance just doesn't make any sense to me as to why, if somebody builds a little garage behind their existing building, suddenly they have to put a parallel sidewalk out in front of their business. I just, if they're building a new business, certainly. But a remodel or adding an addition to a building and then, I know we want to get a lot of sidewalks, but when you're making people build sidewalks, little sections of sidewalk along streets that have never had a sidewalk and are probably never going to need a sidewalk, that just seems to me to be a waste of their money and time and a waste of our time in having to deal with variances.
What's the threshold requirement at this point, Carol, in terms of building how much new construction is required to trigger the sidewalk requirement in a
Well,
commercial context?
in 2015, it was different. Now, we had a small addition exception in 2015, and it was removed in 2016. So any addition to a building triggers the sidewalks. Now, we could go back and do a percentage of, and previously it was on the additions, it was for additions to existing buildings which are 649 square feet or smaller. And I don't know why you removed it in 2016. So now any addition triggers it. Now, I'm talking about commercial and industrial.
Right.
There also is a definition of accessory building or use. And I believe that we've been applying the accessory building or use primarily to residential. But the way the ordinance is written now, it says it excludes accessory buildings.
Okay.
So there is an exemption for placement or construction of an accessory building. Now,
And our definition of an accessory building is?
accessory building, structure, or use is subordinate to the main building, which serves a purpose clearly incidental and related to the main building. So, and then there's descriptions. For the most part, those descriptions look like they would either be for a hotel or for a resident, but it is written so that it could be considered for commercial or industrial. So if you have a development and there is accessory structure that is clearly accessory, for instance, if there's some kind of building, if we had like a hotel or motel, that would be the main building. But then they had some kind of thing where they were going to put their grass stuff, like their...
That wouldn't trigger it.
Yeah, that would not trigger it.
What's the circumstance, Ron? What specific circumstance are you talking about that's concerning you?
Well, we've had a couple of examples. One of them is on Oakwood Road, where there's a garage door, several other businesses. They've got a number of businesses built. They're right on Oakwood Road.
Yeah.
And they built another building behind it.
And that wasn't just a little building, that was a big
Well, it's
building.
a pretty good sized building.
That was, double the size of their
But I mean, since it's not
business.
in no way contiguous to where the sidewalk's going to go, it doesn't make any sense to me that it should trigger the sidewalk
Well, it
ordinance.
was all in the same lot.
Well, I guess you have to,
I mean, it doubled their square footage on the same lot of building.
Possible.
It was that one was a pretty significant investment.
It was, but
I mean,
the
that
other
seems like a
thing that
reasonable
bothers me
requirement.
about the sidewalk ordinance application in a commercial use is that if they have a sidewalk that runs along the front of their business that actually takes you to the front door of their business, that doesn't count. You've got to go out by the street and build another sidewalk, because that's what happened there.
That's awkward.
Yeah, well,
Well, it does seem like something we could, but we have granted variances and,
I know we have, but like I say, but there's other people, if they don't ask for a variance, then, well, I guess we can just let them build it, but
I mean, I guess my concern, Ron, is that if we make this ordinance so wordy and hyper-specific and tailored, we're going to have a list of, a long list of things that may or may not ever occur, when in reality, having a more broadly defined ordinance with a mechanism for variance just seems more practical. I mean, what I don't want to end up with is an ordinance that's so full of holes that nobody ever has to build sidewalk. And that's what I'm concerned with, is putting in too many exceptions that are by definition, when it's one of those where if you can clearly look at it and say, I mean, the example I think of is, the lawnmower supply guy over on the east side of Van Buren, just north of the overpass.
Jack's.
Yeah, that at some point we granted a variance because it was already all paved, and we're like, oh, obviously somebody can work there safely. How would you possibly write that into the ordinance that would perfectly capture that? That seems like that's why we have variances.
well, except to me, if you're building a structure behind an existing structure that isn't going to be on the street anyway, that would be simple enough to me. That shouldn't trigger the sidewalk ordinance.
Well, but
I don't care what kind of building it is.
I guess the point I'm making, Ron, is how do you clearly define it? What if the building is only 75% exposed to the street? I mean, it's one of those that, are you saying literally if a building has no visible frontage whatsoever?
Well, maybe the top.
That's pretty
Maybe you
specific.
could see the top.
I mean, that's what I mean, though, is that I
Yeah.
worry about
Well, I know.
the
I know.
difficulty with defining that it may be unworkable enough that, I mean, we have a system that seems like at this point it's working pretty well. We just occasionally have to grant a variance a couple times a year.
Well, the one thing though that's troubled me for a long time is, to me, the primary purpose of the sidewalk ordinance when we created it was to get sidewalks in residential areas.
I disagree with that.
You do?
I do.
Well, I don't.
I think the
mean,
primary purpose is to make it safer to walk in Enid. Because there are people who, that's their mode of transportation. You gotta walk. And I think our goal is to make it safer for people to be walking around our town.
Well, we just disagree. I mean, because in most cases where you've got a business, you've normally got a large section of concrete out in front of your business.
Well, usually it's the road.
Or
No, I'm not talking
or
about the
parking
road. I'm
lot.
talking about a parking area or some kind of a walking area to
But
where they're gonna have
that's not a
access
place
to your
for, that's
business.
not a place for foot traffic though.
No, those are the cars.
Well, that's
And
where
further,
people-
they're inaccessible. I mean, they're not ADA accessible, I mean.
You could debate that, but I mean, to put a little section of sidewalk out in front of a big parking lot just looks like a waste of time.
I don't know,
and
I mean,
energy.
Ron, I have to push my wife in a wheelchair sometimes.
Have you ever
And
pushed her up and down Garriott?
not up and down Garrett, but I parked at one store and gone a couple down for one thing or another. And it's, if you have ever had the experience of trying to get somebody you're taking care of from point A to point B, and you have sidewalk, or if you're going through a parking lot, a medium, I don't care who you are, it is safer, it's easier, and I think it makes you a whole lot more likely to go from one business to another. And, sure, we could get back in the car and drive around to the next parking lot, but for the folks who can't, and for the large number of people that we serve with our public transportation system who rely on a mobility device, a scooter, a wheelchair, a walker, whatever, it's just not that simple. And we have people who just, that's the only way to get around is walking.
Well, I guarantee you though, that the section of sidewalk that was built in front of that business there on Oakwood Road is never going to be walked on by anybody.
I disagree with you. There are apartment complexes on one side, there's stores on the other. Do you really think nobody's ever gonna walk from that apartment complex to that store? There's a restaurant just on the other side of that location. There are two giant apartment complexes
Along a
south
little
of it.
sidewalk, that's just one little section out there, when you get to the bank, the sidewalk disappears.
Well, today, but when that bank comes back in 5 years and does a big renovation, they've got to connect too. And those sidewalks last a long time, Ron.
You are an optimist.
I'm going to be here I'm only 32. I'll be here for a long time. I'll see it. But I'm convinced that
You're indicating that I probably won't.
Well, it may be. I'm saying it may take a long time, Ron. That it may take 20 years. It may take 30 years.
It will take a long time.
But we will incrementally make it safer for people to walk in Enid. And there are a lot of people who that's their only option.
Well,
I care more about them.
We could talk about this forever, but I mean, I just don't, I'm not in favor of building unnecessary sidewalks.
I think the definition of unnecessary is the
I
hard
think we need all the necessary sidewalks. I want to see every new residential development have sidewalks. I'd love to see all the old residential developments have sidewalks.
Would we be better served by drawing out districts specifically that we want to target in terms of sidewalks then? I mean,
Well, you know, one of the big debates we had was concerning putting sidewalks out there at way out there east, and that when they built that little shopping center out there where Carl's Jr. is, and you know, that maybe you're right. Maybe by the year 2032, somebody else will build another building out there or something would like to have a sidewalk.
People walk to the Loves. I drive back and forth there all the time.
there's apartment complexes right down there. I've seen people walk out and they're walking on that road out there because the apartment complex is all the way down at the end, and that's the shopping area that they go to down the Carl's Jr. stuff. I've seen them too.
And as soon as there's a sidewalk, they hop onto the sidewalk. And we have seen it happen along Garriott, where we've had the hotel development. There was another that we ended up the jewelers and El Patio. All that we have chunks there. Now, we didn't make Curtright do it. We probably should have, but we have chunks that are slowly turning into contiguous chunks of sidewalk, and people use it.
To me,
and
a
it's
lot
safer.
of that is business, is not business friendly.
Our job, Bill, is not solely to make it easier for businesses
To
to
me-
spend less
to me,
money.
it's not
It's public
business friendly.
safety.
To me, it's not business friendly.
But public safety is part of our job too. Our job is not just business friendly. We have a broad range of goals and peoples whose interests we have to advocate for in this community. And public safety of people who have no other means of transportation but walkability is important.
I think also not people who just don't other, but people who want to be able to walk the community. And I reject the idea that a parking lot is a place for my 10, 11, 12-year-old kids to be walking through as the way in order for them to be able to get to store, shops and things in that area. That's ridiculous. It's the first place they're going to get hit.
They do it in every shopping center in the country.
No, they really don't. As a matter of fact, they try to ride skateboards and walk to the places, and they get run off of those places. They get told
Malls
to use
and
the
places
sidewalk.
like
Yeah,
that.
they get
I've
run
never
off.
seen a sidewalk in a mall.
Ask a mall cop
you
what
get inside.
his number one job is doing, running the kids out of the parking lot.
It's probably Benny Zell on his damn.
You're not wrong.
Skateboards and cars and pickups.
Yeah,
Don't mix.
and I'm not from here, but for some reason in this part of the country, just about everybody has a pickup truck. And pulling out these parking spaces, they have massive blind spots. And good luck trying to see a 9 or 10-year-old walking around there and not get backed over.
That probably is not going to change.
Well, but Bill, it has in other communities where
We
people
can't
have
make a decision.
taken this long-term
This is
view.
Enid, Oklahoma.
Well, we can be better, Bill. That's part of the point, is that we have an
We are-
ordinance
we
that
are
we
better.
incrementally make improvement because we can't afford to do it all at once.
We are
But there
better.
are communities that have taken this step, not when we did, but 5 and 10 and 20 years beforehand, that are significantly more walkable.
Name me two of them.
Salem, Oregon, Edmond, Norman, Stillwater.
That's not Enid, none of them are Enid, Oklahoma.
We can be better, Bill. We don't stop just because we're Enid. We do better. That's our job.
I'm going to encourage anybody that's putting in a business or adding any sort of building to their existing location to come and ask for a variance. Because to me, if it doesn't make sense that this sidewalk is going to benefit their business or the neighborhood, we should grant a variance.
And there will be
I was
instances
hoping
where
we could avoid that, but if we can't, we can't.
And there will be instances where we will. For instance, the new State Farm, Jeff Eaton's building, it made a lot of sense to have the ordinance required sidewalks on, I think, 2 sides.
Mm-hmm.
And it made a lot of sense for one chunk sidewalk to exist,
It's really
just
3
rationally looking at
sides.
it. 3 sides.
3
That's
sides.
right.
And he asked for one.
And he asked for a
It was
variance of
granted.
one side, and we granted it. And he
It's on
did.
the backside.
Yeah, where we could look at it, and I don't know how I would possibly describe that in legalese, but you could clearly look at it, and that's why we have a system that allows variances. Because we have an imperfect
I don't
city.
know how you could grant a variance on that one side, because one of these days, on down the line, there might be somebody who might want to walk down there.
Because 4 of us agreed that it didn't make
Oh,
sense.
okay.
Well, as you can see, this is why it's difficult for us to try and come up with another iteration. But if you guys can figure it out, Carol will be glad to draft it up and bring it back to you.
Good luck getting forward.
I don't have that much time.
Yeah,
I don't think I do either.
I'll be here a while. I don't.
Good luck. Item number 6,
Okay,
discuss code-related
Do that a lot
subsequent
less time than it
offense.
used to take.
Carol, are you gonna take the 2, 6, and 7 together?
sure, we can.
Bingo.
Okay,
You
so
bet.
there are,
11 minutes.
okay, you bet. There are quite a few regulations involving code and trash and trees that we have combined and said, if you have one of these and then you have another one in a certain number of years, then it will increase the fine. And we had 100, 200, 500 based on the numbers of years. And what I am suggesting is that we just have 2. Just if you do it, and then if you do it, and it's $100. And if you do any of these a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, it's $500 for all of them, just to make it a little bit simpler for code and for the other departments, and also for the court clerks. I mean, you know,
What offenses are we discussing?
we are talking about if your premises is full of trash, unlawful nuisances, trash and weed accumulation, whether it's your residence or not, failure to remove that, removal of dead trees, storing of trash, if there are.
Okay, now we give them a notice, right, before we assess a
But
fine.
this is not the $4 thing.
What was
No.
in the
No, I
yellow
understand,
tab?
That
but-
thing,
No, it's not the $4. Yes.
Sure.
different thing.
Sure, okay.
It does not require them to be given a notice, because these are criminal offenses, but
High weeds?
they do get notice.
High
I'm-
weeds?
No, not for the criminal aspect. Now, for abatement, yeah, you've got to provide them notice and stuff. But if we just went straight to, but we don't do that. I guess what, if you want to know our practice, yes, they get notice. They are talked to by people before they end up having a ticket written against them. However, this is, these are criminal citations. So a police officer or a code official could go out there
So-
and write a ticket.
So
First time.
theoretically, a police officer could pull up and see a yard with tall grass and trash in it, and that's a $600 fine.
No, it's
It's 2
$100.
infractions. So high
100.
grass is one is 100,
Okay,
and the
you
second
have
one
to-
would be trash.
Okay, but you have to be convicted first.
Before it escalates,
Yeah,
so it'd be
so
2
you have to
100s.
be convicted, so it would be 2 100s.
It's not just a ticket like a speeding ticket. It goes, I mean, is it just, they don't just write like a ticket and put it on your doorstep. It's a charge brought in city court.
Yes, and they have to be found guilty. But a police officer can write a ticket if it occurs in his presence.
Sure.
Now, he's not gonna attach it to the door, and this does not happen. I mean, our police, but you guys are asking.
They just get bored and go.
I mean, mostly these are mostly code infractions, but it could happen.
Carol,
Yes.
sorry, what happens if you own open lottage and
Mhm.
someone dumps trash? You don't know who dumped it there.
Okay. That
And
actually has
Who
happened.
gets fined?
Okay.
The property owner who
Okay.
didn't put it there, or how does that work?
Okay, well, actually, what usually happens is they call Gerald, or they call one of our, like the Public Works or Public Utilities, or they call my office, and because it actually has happened this summer, where someone was concerned that they were going to be charged because people were dumping in the alley, and then the entire block of neighbors would drag the old chairs to the front, and they let us know that they were doing that. They were doing a service for us, and it wasn't that they were that wasn't their stuff. And so we took care of it. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, these could occur. In reality, there could be a charge where someone gets a ticket like that. It doesn't. I mean, the police department doesn't have time to stop, and code really works with people.
I was just more concerned that they're gonna have the ability to address the issue first before it begins to compound on them. And so that was
Yeah.
my only concern with that.
Most like, almost, I would say 98% of the time, they will get calls, they will know that there's a problem, then there will be a ticket, and if they fix it before they get to Judge Long is probably gonna defer it. And if it's deferred, then it's not conviction, so then they've got another chance at 100. But definitely you have to be convicted in court before a subsequent occurs. Now, I've got 5 minutes for trespass with a weapon. Okay, we've been looking through all of the books to make sure that things are not, that things are still okay, that they're still legal. And we now have, carry permits. And the state law provides that if you have a carry permit and you have a weapon, you can enter a building. And it isn't, even if the building says no weapons, it's not a crime to enter the building. But if you're asked to leave and you don't leave, that is a crime. So, trespass with a weapon pretty much no longer exists. It's trespass with a weapon and being asked to leave. So, that's covered under
We're just
trespass.
mirroring state law,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, we made it a little simpler, because state law has this whole complicated thing about having a weapon and carrying it into a building isn't the offense, but remaining in a building where you've been asked to leave because you have a weapon is the offense. And I just thought it was easier, since when you go into a building and you're asked to leave, this is just simpler.
Sounds great.
Okay, we'll bring that back.
Does that apply to schools and churches?
Churches are private property, schools are.
Yeah,
Public.
and they have special rules. This is really for private property. And that's not, school districts and, government buildings, but, this process is pretty much still the same. You call the police and the police will escort you out, and if you don't, then you're guilty of trespass and you would be arrested.
If you have a sign on your door that says no guns allowed, is that the same as being asked to leave, or do they have?
No, it's not.
In a lot of cases, if you're asked to be escorted, if you're going to be escorted out, the damage is already done.
Yes. And this isn't, I'm not saying the law makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying that's what the law is. I mean, I understand
Problem
what
is
you're
when they
saying.
come in the door. If I'm watching,
And
if
of
I'm
course,
watching TV.
part of it is, I don't know how we know when people are carrying, since it's concealed carry. So, it,
Just saying.
but it specifically says that, to enter a building with a building that says, no weapons, if you've got your concealed carry permit, then that isn't the crime. It's remaining in the building, after you've been told to leave. I don't know how the people are supposed to know that, inside the duffel bag or the, purse is the weapon.
But we're just doing state law.
We're just doing state law. I think maybe that's why there's so many, actually, I know what people do. They say that you're not supposed to enter with a large purse or a duffel bag or so they make chain, they put up rules that's why there's so many rules that say that you can't carry large duffel bags and things in. That's and that's okay too. And if you enter with that would also be, and you're asked to leave because you've got this huge suitcase, then that's trespass as well.
Okay.
You're asking
Asking for trouble.
We are adjourned. We'll meet upstairs at 6:30.
All right, okey dokey.
Thank you for watching the Enid City Commission study session. All meetings are broadcast on local cable channel 12 and in high definition on channel 112. In addition, the study session is live streamed on the web at enidtv.org. If you have any questions or comments regarding this broadcast, please visit the City of Enid website at enid.org.